together in the Assembly of United Nations. They're all men of power. The power of knowledge has succeeded to that extent that these men of power must sit together and they must take decisions in concert with each other. This itself is a tremendous winning on the side of knowledge. Knowledge is won to that extent that men of power are asked to take advice, counsel with each other, to be very, very restrained. What is dharma? They are obliged to listen to dharma. The power of Duryodhana has been diminished by the very fact that such institutions have come into existence. The battle is still on. Even today, for example, it is not that men of power immediately accept whatever is being told to them by people who have knowledge. Battle is on. But this battle can be completed. This is the very message of nature, that ultimately the one thing that seems to be impossible is being realized, and the full realization will be a conscious will and a conscious knowledge, both combined together in perfect harmony. Therefore, the last sentence, Sri Aurobindo says, not only then is the upward impulse of man towards the accordance of yet higher opposites rational in itself, but it is only the logical completion of a rule and an effort that seems to be a fundamental method of nature and the very sense of our universal strivings. Therefore, the argument which was put in the second paragraph, that because the ideal is opposed to the actual, therefore ideal is unreal and cannot be realized, by this argument, Sri Aurobindo says that argument, that real ideal is realizable, is perfectly rational. And it is the only logical completion of a rule and an effort that seems to be a fundamental method of nature and the very sense of our universal strivings. As I said earlier, there is still one question more which is still not answered. Why is this the method of nature? This is the method of nature, therefore you come to this conclusion. So far so good. As yet, why should such be the method of nature? That question is not yet answered. That is a very, very difficult question, and the whole book is actually, you might say, is an answer to that question. Why should such be the method of nature? Why should there be dialectical movement at all? Why are these constant opposites in this world? That they get harmonized is a fact. Therefore, you might say the method of nature. But why should there be such a method? There lies a very great secret of its existence. But I will not tell you now because that is what will require, but leave this question in mind. It is still a further more detailed, more metaphysical question. Why should such be the method? Gradually, the whole book is an attempt to answer this question. Why such a thing? But in the meantime, there is an exposition of that particular answer, but gradually. In the next paragraph, we get a further step in the reasoning. Now, if you read the next paragraph, it is an exposition of a massive fact, which has been indicated already in the previous paragraph. But now this massive fact, which has been emphasized very much in modern times in the name of evolution. This massive fact of evolution, that fact is now brought into the picture. You remember what is philosophy? Philosophy is the seeking of essential significance of physical and psychological facts. All metaphysics is an argument which takes you from one fact to the other and draws a conclusion by an argument. Now this argument, however, must relate itself to facts, physical facts and psychological facts. The facts should be made to speak, as it were. If you analyze the facts, if you relate facts with facts, then you should be able to derive significance of these facts, essential significance. Now this effort is metaphysics, is philosophy. This chapter begins with a statement of a fact, namely the fact of history of mankind, and points out that one simple fact which is very pervasive is the aspiration of man. And that aspiration can be characterized very clearly as an aspiration for God, light, freedom, immortality. That is one massive fact which was taken into account. Now comes a more massive fact, a large massive fact, a most comprehensive fact, and that is evolution. Human aspiration is only part of the evolutionary movement. But now we come to the most pervasive fact, and that is of evolution. So now Sri Aurobindo takes into account that large massive fact into the question and tries to derive out of that fact a message, the metaphysical significance of it. So let us read this now. It is concerned with evolution. I'll first read a few lines without interruption, and then we shall come back again to the beginning of the paragraph. We speak of the evolution of life in matter, the evolution of mind in matter. But evolution is a word which merely states the phenomenon without explaining it. For there seems to be no reason why life should evolve out of material elements or mind out of living form, unless we accept the Vedantic solution that life is already involved in matter and mind in life, because in essence matter is a form of veiled life, life a form of veiled consciousness. And then there seems to be little objection to a further step in the series and the admission that mental consciousness may itself be only a form and a veil of higher states which are beyond mind. I stop here. These 5-6 lines contain a fact and an argument. We had seen in the beginning a historical argument, then we saw earlier also ontological argument, then we saw the dialectical argument. Now in this paragraph we see another argument which is called a causal argument. These are all different arguments of metaphysical thought. These are all admissible arguments in metaphysics. Each one has its own validity, its own capacity of coming to a conclusion. As I said, ontological argument is considered to be most decisive argument. You can't escape. Ontological argument gives you inescapable conclusion. You cannot deny it. Once the argument is put forward, the conclusion is inescapable. Historical argument gives you a great probability of its conclusion. So it can only stop by saying, it seems to be promising that this will happen. So historical argument is not that decisive as an ontological argument can be. The dialectical reasoning is supposed to be not absolutely decisive, nor so much historically so much inconclusive. In fact, those who hold dialectical theory, they believe that it is a completely deterministic theory and the conclusion is absolutely inevitable. That is the belief of many people who believe in dialectical argument. Therefore, those like Marxists, for example, who believe in dialectical argument, they are called historically determinists. The conclusion is determined, inescapable. This is bound to happen. You can't escape it. A revolution is inescapable according to Marxists. It is bound to happen. Why? Because of the dialectical movement. The dialectical movement is so powerful, so very pervasive, so inescapable that whenever you can show a dialectical movement, the conclusion is inescapable. But actually speaking, this inescapability of dialectical argument is not by itself so conclusive. In fact, some of the people who have argued against Marx and Hegel, they have argued there is no determinism in history. This is the argument against all dialectical thinkers. There is no determinism at all. According to them, the Russian Revolution depended only upon the arrival of Lenin. At the time when revolution started, Lenin was not in Russia. He was in a foreign country. And there was a question of his visa. It only depended upon one very small event, whether he will be able to pass through or not. A very small event. It hanged just like that. It would have happened, it might not have happened. It just happened. There was no determinism about it. It happened by chance. He came into Russia and then he could be the real motivation of a further movement of revolution, which ultimately succeeded. So, according to many historians, there is no determinism in history at all. There is no dialectical movement at all. Now, these historians also are not so right to say that everything happens in the world by chance. Is a denial of all philosophy. Not only of any history, but all philosophy itself. Because basically philosophy is a theory of explanation. If there were no explanation at all in the world, then philosophy has no standing ground. All philosophy is an attempt to explain. All philosophy is seeking of meaning. If there is no meaning at all, then there is no explanation, and therefore philosophy has no background. Now, what is the fundamental basis of the seeking of meaning? It is that which is one of the central principles of Vedanta. It is a statement that nothing can come out of nothing. That the effect must be present in the cause. This is what is called in Sankhya Satkaryavada. Sat Karya. Karya means the effect. Effect is Sat, is present already in the cause. Therefore it is called Satkaryavada. The effect is already present in the cause. You can have a mango tree only from the mango seeds. You sow the seed of rice and expect a mango tree to come out of it is not possible, is not logical, is not explainable. So according to this theory, if any effect comes about, it can't be an arbitrary effect. It can't just happen. According to Vedanta, this whole world is an effect. If it is an effect, there must be a cause behind it. And that effect must be present in the cause. That cause must be capable of giving birth. In fact, this whole theory of cause and effect relationship is one of the very important theories in philosophy. There is a lot of debate on this theory.